Hello and welcome. I am Arnold Preciado, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services with Imperial County Office of Education.
And I'm Erin Garcia, the Director of Fiscal Advisory Services.
Together, we are providing you with a quick presentation on school district funding and the impact of state cash payment deferrals. This video is provided by the Imperial County Office of Education to the public as an informational tool so that you may be better aware of the issues surrounding school funding. All information provided is subject to change. School districts in the state of California receive funding from several sources. One of the main sources for most school districts is state aid. For a typical district, this would be close to 60% of a school district's funding source. State aid is mostly generated by California sales tax and income taxes. The next source of funding comes from local property taxes. Property taxes are collected locally and are provided to the district as part of a funding formula that will be discussed later in our presentation. School districts also receive federal dollars. Some of the most notable are Child Nutrition, Title I, No Child Left Behind, and special education funding. Some of the other funding that school districts receive are possible donations from the community, interest dollars, developer fees, revenue from parcel taxes, and lottery dollars. As you can see on the graph illustration from EdSource, federal, state, property taxes are distributed for different uses and needs. The distribution of these funds depends on the type of district and the makeup of the students that are being served. Each district has a formula or a particular combination of sources that make up the district's funding. The funding distribution depends on the average number of students attending school during the school year, or what is better known as average daily attendance, or ADA. Students must be in school or be in attendance in order to be counted towards ADA. The next factor in the calculation is the amount by which each ADA will be funded, or what is generally called revenue limit. This is the amount that the district will receive for each average daily student attendance. Districts also receive special funding for which they are qualified to receive based on the type of district and the students that are being served. This special funding is commonly known as categorical funding or categorical aid. The amount that California school districts receive per average daily attendance is called revenue limit. Revenue limit funding is supported by two funding sources, state aid and property taxes. To better show how this works, we will use a bucket to illustrate the funding levels of each source of funding. First, local property taxes are poured into the revenue limit bucket until all the property taxes are properly accounted for. Next, state aid dollars are poured into the revenue limit bucket until the bucket reaches the top. Again, together combined, the funding makes up a district's revenue limit funding. Each district has a different size revenue limit bucket. Some districts, also called basic aid districts, only receive their local property taxes since their property taxes completely fill the revenue limit bucket. We will not discuss basic aid districts funding here at this time, since all Imperial County school districts receive state aid revenue limit. Here's an approximate breakdown between state aid and property tax funding for Imperial County schools. As you can see, the majority of funding for almost all districts in Imperial County comes from state aid. 15 of 16 school districts in Imperial County have a breakdown of 75% or more, with the highest percentage of state aid being 94%, and our average being 87%. It is obvious that Imperial County schools are heavily dependent on state aid revenues. Current state aid deferrals are having a detrimental effect on Imperial County schools since our districts have such a high percentage of their funding coming from state aid. Information on this point will be provided later in our video presentation. It is important to know the difference between school district budgets and cash that districts are entitled to receive in order to better understand the impacts of state aid deferrals on schools. A budget is a plan on how much revenue will be received and how much expenditures will be generated throughout the fiscal year, whereas cash and cash flow plans provides detail on how the school district will meet the estimated expenditures on a monthly basis. Budgeted revenues do not equal what a school district estimates it will receive in cash. The cash flow plan will identify when the agency will need to borrow cash to meet its monthly obligations. School districts are encouraged to develop a 2-year cash flow plan to identify any cash problems in the future. Based on the state economic downturn, cash distribution to schools can change any time. It is important to maintain an up-to-date cash flow plan at all times.
This graph represents how school districts are supposed to receive their monthly cash payments of state aid. The fiscal year begins in July, and 5% is to be distributed in July and August, with an even payment of 9% in each of the remaining months. Then, by the end of the school year, 100% of the state aid amount each district is entitled to would be received by the end of June. However, since the state of California is experiencing a cash crunch of its own, they created a system to defer the monthly statutory payments to school districts. We now have intra-year deferrals, which means the regular monthly payment that should be received is instead moved to another month within the fiscal year. These are shown in the green bars on the chart. We also have inter-year deferrals, which means the state withholds our monthly payment and actually doesn't pay it out until the next fiscal year. The inter-year deferrals are shown in purple on the chart and occur in the months of February through June. After accounting for all of the intra- and inter-year deferrals of cash, this is what the actual payments to school districts looks like for each month. As an individual, we get used to being paid on a regular weekly or monthly salary, and we count on that. Schools in California do not get regular paychecks from the state anymore. As the chart illustrates, schools in fact do not receive any state aid payments in the months of July, August, October, March, or June. And a very large amount of money that they count on to run their schools actually doesn't come in until after the school year is already over, in July and August of the new fiscal year. This requires school districts to plan carefully to be able to continue paying their regular bills and to keep paying their employees during these months of dry cash. This chart demonstrates the increase in the amount of the inter-year deferrals over the past 10 years. Cash deferrals are not a new concept to schools in California. We have been receiving deferred cash payments since the 2002-03 school year. However, the amount of deferrals have drastically increased over the past 4 years, forcing school districts to constantly monitor their cash balances and plan very carefully to be able to meet all of their obligations. At the end of the 11-12 school year, the state of California owed its schools over $9.3 billion. In Imperial County, we have 16 individual school districts, and the total amount of state aid revenue limit funding that the state will pay out to our school districts in 12-13 is estimated to be about $145 million. Of this amount, over $64 million will be deferred and not paid out until the next fiscal year in 13-14. This means that our schools are expected to keep paying its employees and keep paying its bills, even though over 44% of the funding it counts on from the state will not be paid until the 12-13 school year is already over. The deferral of cash payments has a very significant impact to school districts in Imperial County.
If you should have any questions or require additional information, please call me, Arnold Preciado, or Aaron Garcia. We have provided our contact information on the slide for your reference. I hope this presentation by the Imperial County Office of Education has been informative and beneficial and has helped you to better understand how schools are currently being funded and how the state's cash crunch is affecting schools in Imperial County. Thank you for your time and interest.